Welcome to Come Follow Me. Today we're dealing with the Old Testament week 15, Exodus 14 to 17. So starting in chapter 14, we're going to discuss Israel's escape from Egypt and passing through the Red Sea. The Lord speaks unto Moses, saying, "Speak unto the children of Israel, that they turn, that they encamp between Migdol and the sea." Now this wasn't strategically a great move, because as you can see, they're trapped. For Pharaoh will say of the children of Israel, they are entangled in the land, and the wilderness has shut them in. There's nowhere for them to escape, and I will harden Pharaoh's heart. We discuss, that was the Hebrew word kabad, to be heavy. But the Lord here is trying to prove to the Egyptians, and also to the Israelites, that He is God, that He is all-powerful. It was told to the king of Egypt that the Israelites had fled. And the heart of Pharaoh and his servants was turned against the people, and he said, "Why have we done this, that we have let Israel go from serving us?" They lost a huge part of their labor force. And so he makes his chariots ready. He takes 600 chosen chariots, and then all the rest of the chariots, and he pursues after the children of Israel. Now, I've included here a picture or a depiction of what a chariot would have looked like. Interestingly enough, the chariots were not native to the Egyptian people. They were brought by the Hyksos people. As you remember from a couple of weeks ago, the people from Palestine introduced the chariots to the Egyptians. So Pharaoh pursues after the children of Israel, and here it says, with a high hand. In the scriptures here it talks about him going with a high hand. This was very traditional. You can see over here a depiction of an Egyptian pharaoh with a high hand, a hand raised. And they pursued after them and overtook them as they were camping by the sea. Of course, when Pharaoh drew nigh, the children of Israel were sore afraid and cried out. They said unto Moses, "Because there are no graves in Egypt, hast thou taken us away to die in the wilderness? Wherefore hast thou dealt thus with us, to carry us forth out of Egypt? Is not this the word that we did tell thee in Egypt, saying, Let us alone, that we may serve the Egyptians? For it had been better for us to serve the Egyptians than we should die in the wilderness." Moses said unto the people, "Fear not, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will show to you today. For the Egyptians whom ye have seen today, ye shall see them again no more forever. The Lord shall fight for you, and ye shall hold your peace." Then he tells Moses to tell the people to go forward. "Lift up thy rod, and stretch out thine hand over the sea, and divide it. And the children of Israel shall go on dry ground through the midst of the sea. And then the Egyptians will follow after them. And the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord, when I have gotten me honor upon Pharaoh, and upon his chariots, and upon his horsemen." So Moses stretches out his hand over the sea, and the Lord caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all that night, and made the sea dry land, and the waters were divided. Now, if you remember, the east wind traditionally in the scriptures was an omen of bad things to come, because an east wind came from the desert, and it was very dry, and it would normally kill all your crops and destroy everything. But in this case, it was a good thing, because the strong wind that blew all night, and I know this is not how it's depicted in the Ten Commandments or in any of the Hollywood productions, because it's not as dramatic, but the wind blew all night and pushed the water back and dried the ground so that it was passable. And in the morning the Lord looked upon the host of the Egyptians through the pillar of fire and the cloud, and he bound their chariot wheels. Notice it says took off, but the alternate translation is actually better. He bound their wheels, that they drave them heavy. In other words, they were hard going to follow after them. And the Egyptians said, "Let us flee from the face of Israel, for the Lord fighteth for them against the Egyptians." But they were already following after them, and they were stuck in the middle, and their wheels weren't turning well. And the Lord said unto Moses, "Stretch out thine hand over the sea, and the waters may come again upon the Egyptians, upon their chariots, and upon their horsemen." And Moses stretched forth his hand over the sea, and the sea returned to his strength, or to its normal condition. And the Egyptians fled against it, and the Lord overthrew the Egyptians in the midst of the sea. And the waters returned and covered the chariots and the horsemen, and all the host of Pharaoh that had come into the sea after them, and there remained not so much as one of them. So the Lord saves Israel out of the hands of the Egyptians. And Israel saw the Egyptian dead upon the seashore. That must have been a gruesome sight. And Israel saw the great work which the Lord did upon the Egyptians. And the people feared the Lord and believed the Lord and his servant Moses. And as we're going to see shortly, that belief is not very long-lived. In fact, any kind of miracles tend to have a very short shelf life. From the Old Testament Institute Manual, some modern scholars have argued that Moses did not take Israel directly to and then through the Red Sea, but rather through the Reed Sea, since in Hebrew Yam Suf means the Reed Sea. These scholars believed that the area crossed was a marshy lowland near the Bitter Lakes. They maintained that the chariots of the Egyptians bogged down in the mud, and then the soldiers drowned when the high waters came in. But Latter-day Saints have information that the Exodus account is correct. Both the Book of Mormon and the Doctrine and Covenants state directly that it was the Red Sea. Exodus 14 says that the waters were a wall unto them on the right hand and on their left, certainly implying more than passing through a marshy area dried by sudden wind. From Professor Miller, the tendency to want to find naturalistic explanations that support literal historical reading of the text extends to how people read the crossing of the sea. Scholars in the 20th century invented a body of water called the Sea of Reeds. It doesn't exist. If your Bible states in Exodus 15 that the Israelites crossed the Sea of Reeds, it is brought into this scholarly construct. The best Bible translations left it as the Red Sea. On to chapter 15. Here we have Israel singing the song of Moses, and I'm going to talk a little bit more in detail about this on our Thursday meeting, but I'm going to leave it for that right now. In verse 20, and Miriam the prophetess, the sister of Aaron, took a timbrel in her hand, and all the women went out after her with timbrels and with dances. And Miriam answered them, Sing ye to the Lord, for he hath triumphed gloriously. The horse and the rider hath he thrown into the sea. The idea of Miriam as a prophetess is supported also by the Book of Mormon, because in Alma 32 it says, And now he imparteth his word by angels unto men, yea, not only men, but women also. Now this is not all. Little children do have words given unto them many times, which confound the wise and the learned. So Moses brought Israel from the Red Sea, and they went into the wilderness, and they were there 3 days, and they found no water. And when they came to Marah, and you'll note that Marah actually means bitterness, that they could not drink the waters of Marah, for they were bitter. Therefore the name of it was called Marah. And the people murmured against Moses, saying, What shall we drink? This is very reminiscent of Laman and Lemuel in the Book of Mormon. Murmur, murmur, murmur. From the Old Testament Institute Manual, this verse contains the first of over 20 uses of the word murmur in its various forms in the record of Israel's wanderings. Murmuring seems to have been a dominant part of their natures and a root of some of the problems they faced. The word is used nearly the same number of times to describe the attitude of the rebellious members of the Lehi colony who traveled through the same general wilderness area after leaving Jerusalem. Murmuring is defined as a half-suppressed or muttered complaint. Instead of open expression of concern and criticism so a problem can be dealt with, it is behind-the-scenes grumbling. That problem was not unique to the Israelites or to Laman and Lemuel. It is too often prevalent among Latter-day Saints today. Elder Marion G. Romney said, I desire to call your attention to the principle of loyalty. Loyalty to the truth and loyalty to the men whom God has chosen to lead the cause of truth. I speak of the truth and these men jointly because it is impossible fully to accept the one and partly reject the other. I raise my voice on this matter to warn and counsel you to be on your guard against criticism. It comes in part from those who hold or have held prominent positions. Ostensibly, they are in good standing in the church. In expressing their feelings, they frequently say, we are members of the church too, you know, and our feelings should be considered. They assume that one can be in full harmony with the spirit of the gospel, enjoy full fellowship in the church, and at the same time be out of harmony with the leaders of the church, and the counsel and directions they give. Such a position is wholly inconsistent, because the guidance of this church comes not alone from the written word, but also from continuous revelation, and the Lord gives that revelation to the church through his chosen leaders, and none else. It follows, therefore, that those who profess to accept the gospel, and who at the same time criticize and refuse to follow the counsel of the leaders, are assuming an indefensible position. So Moses cries unto the Lord, and the Lord shows him a tree, which when he casts into the waters, makes them sweet. Then verse 26 is important to consider. If thou wilt diligently hearken to the voice of the Lord thy God, and wilt do that which is right in his sight, and will give ear to his commandments, and keep all his statutes, I will put none of these diseases upon thee, which I have brought upon the Egyptians, for I am the Lord that healeth thee. Chapter 16. Again we have more murmuring. The whole congregation of the children of Israel murmured against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. No sooner had they seen several miracles, and they just forget. The children of Israel said unto them, Would to God we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the flesh pots, and when we did eat bread to the full. For ye have brought us forth into this wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger. Now, if I remember correctly, they were slaves. Somehow they seem to forget that fact. Verse 4. Then said the Lord unto Moses, Behold, I will rain bread from heaven for you. And the people shall go out and gather a certain rate every day, that I may prove them whether they will walk in my law or no. And Moses spake unto Aaron, Say unto all the congregation of the children of Israel, Come near before the Lord, for he hath heard your murmurings. They may have been half whispers, but the Lord can hear them. And it came to pass, as Aaron spake unto the whole congregation, they looked toward the wilderness, and behold, the glory of the Lord appeared in the cloud. And the Lord spake, I have heard the murmurings of the children of Israel. Speak unto them, saying, At even ye shall eat flesh, and in the morning ye shall be filled with bread, and ye shall know that I am the Lord your God. And it came to pass that at even the quails came up and covered the camp, and in the morning the dew lay around. So the Lord gives them another miracle. I thought I'd research the quails a little bit, particularly the Egyptian quails. And this is what I found out. The quail is known for its tender, juicy meat. The spring was also the time of the year that quails migrated north in large numbers. And due to the long migration, and being a heavy bird, they tire easily and fly low to the ground and can be easily caught. They're also not the smartest bird in the world. They fly in large groups, sort of like a locust, bedding down for the night just before sundown, resting in groups of 75 or more for safety. Quail delicacies were an Egyptian treat in the spring of the year. They were easy to catch and easily preserved by drying in the hot sun. Continuing on, and when the dew that lay was gone up, behold, upon the face of the wilderness there lay a small round thing, as small as the hoarfrost on the ground. And when the children of Israel saw it, they said to one another, It is manna. The alternate translation for that is, What is it? For they wist not what it was. And Moses said unto them, This is the bread which the Lord hath given to you to eat. And they took it, and then they ground it down and made it into flour. This is the very thing which the Lord hath commanded. Gather of it every man according to his eating, an omer for every man. Just in case you don't know how much an omer is, from Exodus 16:36, we find out that an omer is a 10th part of an ephah. So you don't know what that is. Well, I had to research that. The omer equals, according to some, about 3.64 liters, but the Jewish Study Bible, however, indicated that it was 2.3 liters. So let's say it was about 3 liters per person per day. And then Moses gave them some instruction. Let no man leave it till the morning. Notwithstanding, they hearkened not unto Moses. But some of them left it until the morning, and it bred worms and stank. And Moses was wroth with them. And they gathered it every morning, and every man according to his eating. And when the sun waxed hot, it melted. So you can see here the Lord's trying to train them. They get the bread of life every morning. Sounds like scripture reading that we do every morning. From Elder D. Todd Christofferson. By providing a daily sustenance, one day at a time, Jesus was trying to teach faith to a nation that over a period of 400 years had lost much of the faith of their fathers. He was teaching them to trust him, to look upon him in every thought. Doubt not, fear not. He was providing enough for one day at a time. Except for the sixth day, they could not store manna for use in any succeeding day or days. In essence, the children of Israel had to walk with him today and trust that he would grant a sufficient amount of food for the next day, on the next day, and so on. In that way, he could never be too far from their minds and hearts. The house of Israel called the name thereof manna. It was like a coriander seed, white, and the taste of it was like wafers made with honey. I didn't know what that was, so I looked it up. And so coriander is a herb. It's also known as Chinese parsley and cilantro. The leaves are called cilantro. All parts of the plant are edible, but the fresh leaves and the dried seeds are the parts most traditionally used in cooking. And Moses said unto Aaron, Take a pot, and put an omer full of manna therein, and lay it up before the Lord, and keep it for your generations. And the Lord commanded Moses, so Aaron laid it up before the testimony. And we later find out in Exodus 25 that this testimony, this pot, was put into the Ark of the Covenant. And the children of Israel did eat manna 40 years, until they came to the land inhabited. They did eat manna until they came unto the borders of the land of Canaan. Don't be thinking that all they had was manna and quail. Remember, they had herds as well. And so while the Lord provided this additional food so they wouldn't wipe out the entire herds of animals that they had, they would also have been able to consume some of it with the growth, and they would have had the dairy products from it. On to chapter 17. Again we have some murmuring, because there's no water for the people to drink. Wherefore the people did chide with Moses, or complain, and said, Give us water that we may drink. And Moses said unto them, Why chide ye with me? Wherefore do ye tempt the Lord? And the people thirsted there for water, and the people murmured against Moses, and said, Wherefore is this that thou hast brought us up out of Egypt? Getting tired of hearing the same thing. To kill us, and our children, and our cattle with thirst. Again, remember, they were slaves. And Moses cried unto the Lord, saying, What shall I do unto this people? They be almost ready to stone me. Okay, now, I'm going to take you back to what we studied a little earlier in the year. Remember in Moses chapter 1, that the Lord gave this special blessing to Moses. Blessed art thou, Moses, for I, the Almighty, have chosen thee, and thou shalt be made stronger than many waters, for they shall obey thy command as if thou wert God. And lo, I am with thee even to the end of thy days, for thou shalt deliver my people from bondage, even Israel, my chosen. And I'm sure at the time Moses was thinking, I live in a desert. Why would I need command of the water? Well, it comes in handy if you have to cross the Red Sea, or the Lord says, Go on before the people, and take with thee the elders of Israel, and thy rod wherein thou smotest the river. Take it and go, and behold, I will stand before thee upon the rock, and thou shalt smite the rock, and there shall come forth water out of it, that the people may drink. And Moses did so in the sight of the elders of Israel. And he called the name of the place Massah, which means testing, trying, or proving, and Meribah, which means strife and complaint. Remember, names are important in the Old Testament. Because of the chiding of the children of Israel, and because they tempted the Lord, or saying, Is the Lord among us or not? From the seminary manual. Just as the requirement to gather manna can symbolize what the Lord requires of us today, the account of Moses striking the rock also has a symbolic meaning. The scriptures sometimes refer to Jesus Christ as the rock. Christ also refers to himself as the bread of life and a provider of living water. From Dallin H. Oakes, we know that our physical bodies require certain nutrients to sustain life and to maintain physical and mental health. If we are deprived of these nutrients, our physical and mental vitality are impaired, and we have a condition called malnutrition. Malnutrition produces such symptoms as reduced mental functions, digestive disorders, loss of physical strength, and impairment of vision. Good nutrition is especially important for children, whose growing bodies are easily impaired if they lack the nutrients necessary for normal growth. I did hear one podcaster that I was listening to this week that always asks his class, he's an institute teacher, and he says, How many of you forget to eat? Of course, everybody says, no, our body reminds us and we eat. I do remember, though, as a child that, well, as a tween, I was frequently so busy that I failed to come home at lunch. But then I got so hungry that by supper time I was dying. I think some of us from time to time suffer from spiritual malnutrition. Our spirits also require nourishment. Just as there is food for the body, there is food for the spirit. The consequences of spiritual malnutrition are just as hurtful to our spiritual lives as physical malnutrition is to our physical bodies. Symptoms of spiritual malnutrition include reduced ability to digest spiritual food, reduced spiritual strength, and an impairment of spiritual vision. Continue on in Exodus 17. And Moses said unto Joshua, Choose us out men, and go and fight with Amalek. Tomorrow I will stand on the hill with the rod of God in my hand. So Joshua did as Moses said to him, and fought with Amalek. And Moses, Aaron, and Hur went up to the top of the hill. From the Institute Manual, the Amalekites may have been descendants of Esau. They attacked the Israelites in a most cowardly way, killing first the feeble and the faint and the weary at the rear of the marching nation. For this lack of respect toward God, the Amalekites were cursed by the Lord. The Israelites were subsequently commanded to utterly put out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven. And it came to pass, when Moses held up his hand, Israel prevailed, and when he let down his hand, Amalek prevailed. But Moses' hands were heavy, and they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat thereon, and Aaron and Hur stayed up his hands. I don't really like that translation, stayed up. So if you look at the original Hebrew word, they suggest the word sustain or hold up, which I think makes more sense to us. And Joshua discomforted Amalek and his people with the edge of the sword. And then the Lord said unto Moses, Write this for a memorial in a book. And I know a lot of people talk about the fact that the book of Moses was a fiction, that it was really an oral tradition that wasn't written down until centuries later. But we can see here that the Lord in fact instructed Moses to write in a book. Now I did look up this word sustain, and I thought that the history of it was very interesting. It comes from the Latin, and it's split into two words. The sus means under, and the tenere means to hold up. So the sense is that you're holding it up from underneath, or sustaining. And it reminded me of Doctrine and Covenants, section 81. Wherefore be faithful, stand in the office which I have appointed unto you. Succor the weak, lift up the hands which hang down, and strengthen the feeble knees. So in this case, Moses must have had feeble knees because they had him sit on a rock. And then they lifted his hands so that they could win the victory. From President Harold B. Lee, who was at that time the first counselor in the first presidency, I think that is the role of the president, and Eldon Tanner and I have to fulfill. The hands of the president may grow weary. They may tend to droop at times because of his heavy responsibilities. But as we uphold his hands, and as we lead under his direction by his side, the gates of hell will not prevail against you and against Israel. Your safety and ours depends upon whether or not we follow the ones whom the Lord has placed to preside over his church. He knows whom he wants to preside over this church, and he will make no mistake. The Lord doesn't do things by accident. He has never done anything accidentally. And I think the scientists and all the philosophers in the world have never discovered or learned anything that God didn't already know. His revelations are more powerful, more meaningful, and have more substance than all the secular learning in the world. Let us keep our eye on the president of the church and uphold his hands, as President Tanner and I will continue to do so. And I think that those words make sense even for today. We need to sustain, uphold, and follow the counsels of the leaders that the Lord has placed over us to help us, to guide us, and direct us. Well, I look forward to further discussions on Thursday night when we present our second video of the week. Have a great week. Speak unto the children of Israel that they turn and encamp before Pi-hahi.